Welcome to the Peak Day podcast, where we talk about natural family planning and fertility for a lifetime with our friends. Today's guests are Ben and Rita Peel. Ben and Rita are both from farming families, Ben in Montana and Rita in Nebraska. They met in Nebraska in 2011. Ben, a Protestant, attended RCIA and entered the Catholic Church. They became engaged and took NFP classes through Couple to Couple League and were married in 2013. In 2019, they became a CCL teaching couple and began teaching live online classes. They are the NFP coordinators for their diocese of Great Falls, Billings in Montana. They have a passion for promoting NFP and encouraging priests and parishes to require NFP during marriage prep. Ben and Rita have 3 children, and they are a full-time farming family. Thank you, Ben and Rita, for joining us on the Peak Day podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Can you tell us a story of how you met?
Yeah, it's pretty fun to tell people because you can just see God's hand in it. So like you had said, Ben is from Montana and I'm from Nebraska. But after college, Ben moved down to Nebraska for 3 years to get some off-the-farm experience before moving back. And so during that time is when God brought us together. I was teaching and he was working for a farming cooperative. And we happened to be in the same place at the same time. He was at a seed corn conference and I was at a teaching workshop in the same hotel convention center. So we had this really female heavy teaching workshop on one side of the hall and this really male heavy farming workshop on the other side. And we just met in the hallway. He said hi and just struck up a conversation. It was so comfortable. One of the ladies I was with, she's like, "Oh, I thought that was somebody you knew." I'm like, "No, I just met him."
Yeah, I mean, I got paid to, have conversations with producers of corn and soybeans or whatever they grow and try to help them be more successful with selling them different products for their farm. So it wasn't awkward or anything for me to just strike up a conversation with a stranger because that's what I did almost every day in my work.
So then how did you keep in contact with each other?
Well, she was going to call me. So it was on her side of the court and she waited, I think, 2 days. Yep. Yeah. She didn't call the next day.
Could be too eager.
And so, but she did call and right away we never did texting. We never did Facebook. We just did the old fashioned
phone calls. Yeah. So, yep. And we were an hour apart. Yeah. So it made it pretty feasible. You take turns visiting each other each weekend.
So how did the Catholic faith come into the picture?
Well, I grew up in a Protestant home with 2 very faithful mom and dad that supported us. I have 2 older sisters. So the 3 of us had a lot of Christian education growing up, and that set the foundation for my life of being a disciple of Jesus. And when I was down in Nebraska, obviously there was a lot of probably more Catholic influence. And I became good friends with a priest down where I lived initially. And he was just a really good friend. And he had a good influence on my life of showing me the positives of the relationship with Jesus and how the teachings of the Catholic Church fit into that discipleship of following Christ. And so I was curious about the Catholic Church even before I met Rita. Mm-hmm. And our relationship when we were dating, especially early on, was a lot of curiosity and good conversations about our different upbringings.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was a topic we didn't shy away from. And I think that was by the grace of God, too, because it wasn't easy to talk about. We had different faith backgrounds and we both were really strong in them. But we shared information, we shared books, we learned and talked and prayed a lot about it. And I would say, I feel like Ben kind of studied his way into the church. Reading about the church's teachings, especially, the Eucharist, he's like, yeah, I believe that. And then when we had that opportunity to take our CIA classes together, I would drive that hour each Monday night and go to class with him. And that really helped us grow in our faith together and in our relationship.
And as far as RCIA, we were blessed with a really vibrant young priest that really was on fire for each and every couple in that class. I think there's 5 couples and there's a couple other couples, real similar situation as us, where one or the other was entering the church initially before their marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a good situation where we had a lot of opportunity to ask questions and to ask hard questions and to really discern what God wanted each one of us to do.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Ben, before you became Catholic, you believed in chastity before marriage. How did your belief grow after you went through RCIA?
I guess for me and my journey from the Protestant denomination of the Presbyterian Church to, the Catholic churches, I just really was amazed by how much, research over the last 2,000 years the Catholic Church had done on these issues, such as contraception. Whereas I felt like we just didn't talk about things like that growing up. And I think it's because a lot of the Protestant churches didn't have a teaching on, exactly what does chastity look like before marriage or after marriage.
Mm-hmm.
What does contraception have to do with anything? It was just kind of left in the dark for the Christian to decide on his own through prayer. And if you look at, Humanae Vitae from St. John Paul II, other teachings from the church fathers, it's pretty obvious that contraception is a very new thing that was just introduced in the last 100 years as a result of the sexual revolution. Like, it's not a Christian idea. And it just, the more things you read and, the more I discerned about it, is the contraception, basically the teaching that contraception is a sin. It's a immoral thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
It made sense. It wasn't a
big issue.
Wasn't a big issue. It never really was a big issue, I guess, for me. And I don't know exactly. Maybe other people would have harder time with it, but for me, it made sense. And maybe it was just because I did spend a lot of time studying it.
So you said that you learned about natural family planning during your marriage prep class. Was learning NFP a requirement for marriage prep?
In our diocese, it wasn't. I think taking one class was a requirement because we got married in the Omaha Archdiocese in Nebraska. But I mean, we never questioned whether we'd take a full class or not. We just knew that we would.
Mm-hmm.
So we just signed up for it right away. I had a good friend from college. She and her husband got married a few years before us. And they took NFP classes from this particular couple. And then we ended up taking classes from the same couple.
Yeah, they're a very inspiring couple. It was something we enjoyed. It was a Sunday afternoon. It was a way for Rita and I to do something together.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially they inspired us to become teaching couples someday.
Yeah, so we went from, going on dates, learning NFP. Now some of our date time is teaching NFP.
Right. What were some of the challenges that you kind of came up against when you started practicing NFP?
Well, I think from just the purely technical charting aspect, like learning your mucus signs and becoming confident in that, I just think it naturally, it's challenging to kind of, know what you're seeing and, to really, trust what you're seeing, I guess, and to know the different types of mucus. So that was something that was a challenge at the beginning.
Sure.
And, just something to have to work through. And over the years, you just have more confidence in it. And then you also just learn what your cycle is like. Because when you first start off charting, you've never done it before. So over time, you kind of know, well, this is about how long my cycle is. And so maybe it's not the end of the world if I miss a little bit of mucus right at the beginning, because I know how long my cycles typically are. And,
Anything for you, Ben, as far as challenges?
Well, it's a challenge right away, just because you're getting ready for a wedding, right? So
Yeah.
I think, looking back, like, what would you do different to make NFP easier the first 2 years? Well, I mean, we follow the church's teaching. We waited till we were married to live together, and we did a lot of dates and things to get to know each other before marriage. And so we kind of, we knew how to go on dates, right? And do things together when, you need to abstain. But it's still just a stressful time, and that impacts your cycle. You just that whole wedding and learning to, to live together in marriage. And so after that first year, it's really pretty easy, so if you can get through, if you can get through the first, 15 or 20 cycles of actually charting with the technicalities, then you're going to have it made.
Right. How important is it to have that like open communication when you're charting, especially when you're charting to postpone pregnancy?
Well, your communication is essential. It's everything. Basically, and if you want to, like one word about NFP, one of them would be communication. So you're communicating of when you're fertile and when you're not fertile, and in relation to when you feel God is calling you to start having kids, that's going to influence your schedule, your everyday schedule. And so without that open communication, you really can't practice NFP. I think it'd be kind of a lie to say, well, you can do NFP without really working on your communication and being open. They just go hand in hand. It's essential for NFP.
Yeah. And I think one of the beauties about NFP and talking about, family planning and intentions is that can change from month to month. Because your life changes so much from month to month and cycle to cycle. And so this, the start of the cycle, and be like, well, are we, definitely trying to have a baby, or are we, we'll just leave it open to God? Or is it like, yeah, now is not a good time at all, and you can, change that. And it's, I don't know, it's easy to make that decision, to be able to change that. Whereas if you're using contraceptives and you're like, okay, well, you got to either take it or not take it, or you maybe have this many cycles after not taking it before you can return to fertility. You don't have to deal with those side issues if you're practicing NFP.
What is the connection that you have experienced between growing in trust in God's plan for your lives and practicing NFP?
I enjoy reading theology, and like I said, we St. John Paul II with Humanae Vitae. We get to participate in God's creation of the world. What an honor, so you really can't mess up NFP. You really can't. It's just a matter of rearranging your priorities. Like if you want this to happen this year, maybe God has another plan. And so now your priorities have to change, and you just have to discern, what God wants you to do. And then as the more kids you have, the more you learn that you're discerning like every hour of every day. Your life gets a little bit busier, but that's what God wants us to do, is probably discern every minute.
Right. Yeah. To lean on him and trust him in everything. Yeah. So having to trust him through NFP and planning our family leads to having to, to being able to trust him better in everything in life.
Right. Well, it sounds like you guys had a real gift of being, having confidence in natural family planning and in the teaching of the church. And that's a beautiful gift, a beautiful blessing to have as a couple.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. We were blessed with being able to have 3 children spaced, 2 years apart at the beginning. And then, you come to know that NFP works. But then, like Ben said, even more so, God's plan works. Like he chose to give us those 3 kids spaced 2 years apart. So we've got, 3 kids close in age who are, love playing together and, spending time together. But ultimately it was up to God. It wasn't up to us, but we were open to letting him work in our lives.
Yeah. Our first couple that we taught, so January of 19, we started out, it was a couple here actually within our parish, because our parish is a mission of the town next to us. And so from that town next to us in the bigger church, there's a couple that was getting married that year. And so it was just a one-on-one class with them. And it turns out I had known one of them a little bit through college. So it was a real easy connection. Right away, the first class, we just hit it off. And fortunately, we become very good friends. I would consider them one of our better friends now today. And so that kind of started off. We advertised through our diocese, through our parish, that we are teachers with the couple league. And we're free to talk about NFP to people that want to hear about it. So
I think we just kind of felt a calling from God. I think initially to serve our diocese, because we knew there weren't very many NFP teachers in our diocese. So we did first initially teach that couple that was, a little more local to us. And then we live in a rural area that's not really highly Catholic. So we just couldn't find anybody else to teach locally. So, we're always getting emails from the Couple to Couple League. We're looking for more online teachers. And so we decided, well, if we really want to teach, we're going to have to teach online. So we started doing that probably later that year or the next year. And we've been able to teach couples from around the country, which is really cool.
What is one thing you would like to tell couples about learning and using a natural fertility method?
I think you have to look at it as an investment in your marriage. And your marriage is like, obviously God designed marriage. He is the author of marriage. So we have to do all we can to, follow his will in marriage. And it's such a long-term investment. So the first couple of years are going to be really hard. And they just are. You just have to learn to stay, to abstain and to do fun things together, like when you're dating. And it will get easier over time. And then your love will continue to grow stronger and stronger because you have this open line of communication. Whereas more maybe in a secular context, a worldly context, we have a lot of marriages that fall apart over the years, where actually your marriage through NFP and following Christ's teachings will actually get stronger over time. And God will reward you for being faithful to his teachings.
So, Ben and Rita, thank you very much for being on the Peak Day podcast.
Thank you, Martha.
Welcome. Yeah.